Hello everybody. Welcome back to iArt Jeremy. Today I want to talk about my first car. Let the garbage truck roll on down the road. I don't know if you can hear that or not. There's a garbage truck. My first car was a 1970 Volkswagen Beetle, and I bought it for, let's see, I was 13 years old when I bought it. It was facilitated by my stepfather, and I paid $20 and a case of beer for it. And obviously I didn't buy the beer. And at 13 years old, I lived on a farm, and so this was kind of like a field car. We just drove it around in the field and played around with it, and it was supposed to be a learning experience for me. And I learned a lot with that car. I broke it, I fixed it, I hacked into it. I drove it really fast and dangerously. A lot of times it didn't have brakes because I didn't know what I was doing. And I loved it. I don't remember the original color of the car, but when I had received it, it was a multicolor car. It had been painted with spray cans and stencils, and it had flames all down the side of it, and it was a funny looking car. It's a car a 13-year-old would enjoy, and I did. I really enjoyed it. I remember one time the throttle linkage broke on it, and I took a piece of twine string and ran it through the firewall of the car so that I could pull what was left of the throttle linkage with the string. So, being a manual shift car, I was trying to throttle and shift and clutch and drive on this old country road. It wasn't really a road, it was our drive, because we lived way back in the wilderness, you might say. But needless to say, it was impossible to work it that way. And one time it actually got stuck, and I was flying around a curve, and the throttle was stuck. And yeah, it was pretty dangerous. I think I had my sister in the car with me once, and it did that, and I got yelled at by my parents. And eventually it went on to be a parts car, because I bought multiple Volkswagen Beetles. In my life, in my young life. I haven't had any lately. My wife wants me to buy another one. I don't know if I will or not. I'd like to. I have a lot of other projects going on right now. I don't know if I have the time for that. My brother has some, and I'm extremely jealous that he has them now. They're a lot more rare now than they were when I was young. Well, I got this fender real wonky. Should I fix it? Let's go ahead and we'll do something funky like here. Make it add up a little bit. But that led to my second car, which was a 1967 Volkswagen Beetle. and I love that car. Someone had done some work to it. They were trying to restore it. It had a black button tuck interior. It had an 8-track player with a amplifier and EQ. It was green. I just loved that. I loved the car, and I learned a lot of things from that car as well. That's probably the first car I took the engine out of and replaced it multiple times because I was pretty rough on it. And a lot of parts from my first VW went into that one. I busted the windshield in that one time, so I took the windshield out of my older one and put in there, since it didn't have a title and things like that. It wasn't stolen or anything like that. It was just a neglected car. I knew the owner, and they hadn't wanted to wait, what am I doing here? This bumper's bothering me, but this is just for fun. He just hadn't bothered in, what's the word, licensing it and transferring it, and I bought it from one of his friends, and they just had it as, around the shop as a parts car, and that's why I got it so cheap. And so it wasn't illegal or anything like that. But then eventually it became a storage place for all my Volkswagen parts, because at that time people were just giving me parts left and right. I couldn't believe, I believe my uncle gave me a truckload of VW engine parts one time, and people really treated them like they were junk. And if you try to buy one now, you're going to see that people don't treat them like that anymore. They're a lot more rare than what they used to be. But yeah, that was my first car. And I said people gave me parts, like people gave me whole cars for parts. Like one time someone gave me like 3 different cars. They weren't running, but they were all parts cars. So I always had parts. And so my first car became a storage place for my parts and things like that. Did I say that my first car was green? I'll make this one green. These are some more new material. Some of the stuff I got for Christmas, and some of it I've ordered and I'm trying it out. These this marker, they're pretty good. But I don't know how resilient they are yet. I know I have more stories about my VWs. Just trying to think what would be the most relevant to talk about on this video. Well, my first accident was in my green Volkswagen. I needed parts, so I drove to the parts house in town one day. I needed new parts, not the old parts that I had. and I hadn't had my license yet. I only had my permit. I was with my stepdad, and when I was leaving the parts house, I backed up into this woman's, I think it was a Pinto, and it really didn't do much damage. I just bumped her, and you know, I went and told her, and she's like, "Oh, it's no big deal. You didn't do any damage." But that was my first accident. Was in there, and I think my second accident was in that Volkswagen too, because the brakes went out, and I was driving home from school. I had my license by then. I was driving home. Actually, I was taking my girlfriend home from school. Got out of the line there, and traffic stopped, and my brakes went out, and I rear-ended the person in front of me, and he was mad. He was mad. He had just bought the truck he had, but it damaged the front fenders on my car. It didn't bust the headlights out, ironically. It just mashed the fenders in, and he said, "Well, you didn't hurt me. You just scratched it, but watch what you're doing." He said a few choice words to me, and that was pretty much the end of it. He didn't report it to insurance or anything like that. So I'm a little bit better driver now, I believe. I could be wrong. I like to think that I'm a good driver. My friends used to like to pick up my Volkswagen and put it in weird places, like they would, you know, like pick the back end of it up and put it in awkward parking spots so I couldn't get it out until somebody moved their car or something like that. You know, it was so light you could get 4 or 5 guys together and either bounce the thing or just, you know, pick it up and move it and scoot it around. It was funny. With my sound system, my 8-track, and it really was funny. It had an 8-track with an amplifier in it, but being it was I think it was the 90s, and I had 2 10-inch speakers in the back, and I got pulled over for disturbing the peace with my speakers. I don't think that's the first. It might be the first time I was pulled over. I don't know. Well, I just wanted to make a little video, and I wanted to talk about my first car and how much I miss it. It really was a fun car to own. Maybe not always the most reliable, but definitely was good on gas. And I love it, and I still love it to this day. I wish I still had it. I moved on to hot rods. The next car after that was an Oldsmobile with a 455 big block that I thought was big stuff, but it really wasn't. It was just a stock big block. And I was just a kid too. I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything. And unfortunately, all my Volkswagens were either sold or went to the scrap yard because, like I said, people didn't value them as much now or then as they do now. So that's my first car story. What was your first car? You have any interesting stories? Can you hear my dog snoring? I don't know if you can hear that or not. The dog is over there snoring. She's always snoring when I'm making videos, it seems like. But there you go. There's my first cars, Volkswagen Beetles, 1967 and on up. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.